Turn around. Hands behind your back, now.
Officer, my hands are visible. I am standing by my own vehicle for a medical appointment.
You're loitering. Stop talking and comply.
Standing here is not a crime. Lower your taser, you are escalating.
Last warning. ID or you're going to jail.
You're making a very public...
This was the scene that shattered the quiet morning in an affluent suburb of Northern Virginia just outside of D.C. It was 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and Officer Kyle Braden was about to destroy his entire life in under 5 minutes. He had his taser drawn, pointing it directly at the chest of a man who had faced down enemy combatants in Fallujah and the Korengal Valley. The man standing by the silver Ford F-150 wasn't shaking. He wasn't yelling. He was Marcus Thorne, a 6'4" black man with graying temples and the kind of posture you can't fake. He was 54 years old, a retired Army colonel with 22 years of distinguished service. And Officer Braden, 27 years old with a badge that shone a little too brightly in the morning sun, had absolutely no idea who he was dealing with. Before we get into the details of this infuriating encounter, I need you to do something for me. If you believe that respect is a two-way street and that a badge doesn't give anyone the right to bully a citizen, go ahead and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, city, state, country. We've got a lot to cover here, and you're going to want to stick around until the end to see exactly how justice was served. Marcus Thorne had arrived early for a dental appointment. He needed a root canal, not exactly anyone's idea of a good time, and had pulled into the parking lot of the dental complex about 20 minutes before his scheduled time. He was dressed in a clean polo shirt, tucked into khakis, a habit from 2 decades of military discipline that never quite goes away. He was leaning against the bed of his truck, checking emails on his phone, enjoying the last few minutes of fresh air before undergoing a dental drill. Officer Braden had been on patrol for 3 years. He was known in the precinct as a hot shot, the kind of guy who looked for trouble where there wasn't any, always eager to make a bust, always eager to prove he was the alpha in every interaction. He had received a dispatch call regarding a suspicious person. A resident in the neighborhood behind the medical complex, a notoriously nosy woman who called the police if a squirrel looked at her wrong, had reported a large black male loitering near expensive cars. That was the entirety of the information. No report of a break-in, no report of violence, just a man standing. Braden rolled up to the curb, saw Thorne, and immediately decided this was his guy. He didn't park and observe. He didn't walk up and say, "Good morning, sir." He slammed his cruiser into park, jumped out, and started screaming commands. This is what we call an adrenaline dump, folks. Braden was treating a man checking his email like he was an active shooter. Thorne looked at the young officer with a mixture of pity and annoyance. He had commanded battalions. He had negotiated with tribal leaders in Afghanistan while snipers watched from the ridges. A shouting 20-something with a bad haircut wasn't going to rattle him. But Thorne also knew the statistics. He knew that being a large black man in America meant that any sudden move could be interpreted as a threat. So he moved slowly. He kept his hands open. He spoke clearly. "Officer," Thorne said, his voice a deep baritone that carried authority without needing to shout. "I am waiting for my dentist appointment at Dr. Evans' office right there. My appointment is at 9:30. I suggest you lower your weapon and we can discuss this like adults." "Don't tell me what to do!" Braden yelled, stepping closer, closing the distance, which is exactly what they teach you not to do in the academy if you actually perceive a threat. "I'm conducting an investigation. You're loitering. You're..." "Standing by my own vehicle in a parking lot where I have a medical appointment is not loitering," Thorne replied calmly. "Check the license plate. It's registered to me. Marcus Thorne." "I don't need to check anything until you're in cuffs," Braden shouted. "You're resisting." "I am not resisting. I am standing still. I am answering your questions. But I am not getting on my dirty asphalt in my good clothes because you have an inability to assess a situation." Braden's face turned a dangerous shade of red. He wasn't used to people talking back to him with such calm precision. He was used to fear. He was used to compliance. He wasn't getting either, and his ego was writing checks his career couldn't cash. Thorne knew exactly what was happening. This was a Terry stop, a temporary detention based on reasonable suspicion. But for a Terry stop to be legal, the officer needs reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime has occurred, is occurring, or is about to occur. Standing in a parking lot while black is not a crime, no matter what the neighbor who called 911 thought. "Officer," Thorne said, "Terry versus Ohio requires you to have reasonable, articulable suspicion of criminal activity to detain me. You have a call about a suspicious person. That is a conclusion, not a fact. What specific conduct have you observed that leads you to believe I am breaking the law?" Braden blinked. He hadn't expected a law lecture. "You're refusing to identify yourself. That's obstruction. Failure to identify is only a crime if I am lawfully arrested or detained," Thorne countered. "And since you have no probable cause for an arrest and no reasonable suspicion for a detention, I am not required to show you my papers. This isn't 1940s Europe, son. This is the United States of America." "I'm not your son," Braden snapped. "Last chance. ID or you're going to jail." "I am under no obligation to provide identification unless I am being cited or arrested," Thorne said. "Am I under arrest?" "You are now." Braden lunged forward. The commotion had drawn attention. Inside the dental office, the receptionist, a sharp woman named Sarah, had seen the flashing lights. She looked out the window and saw her 9:30 patient, Mr. Thorne, who always sent a Christmas card to the staff, being screamed at by a police officer. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her smartphone hit record and ran out the front door. Dr. Evans, the dentist, followed her. "Hey, officer!" Dr. Evans shouted, running across the lot in his scrubs. "What are you doing?" "That's my patient." Braden ignored him. He had tunnel vision now. He had committed to the course of action, and in his mind, backing down would mean losing face. He holstered his taser and reached for his handcuffs. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Thorne looked at the dentist and gave a small, reassuring nod. "It's all right, doctor. Let him do what he feels he has to do." Thorne turned slowly. He knew that if he physically resisted, even lawfully, Braden would escalate to lethal force. He had seen young soldiers panic before. He wasn't going to die in a parking lot over a bruised ego. He placed his hands behind his back. The metal cuffs clicked tight, too tight. "You're making a mistake, son," Thorne said quietly, so only Braden could hear. "A very expensive, very public mistake." "Shut up," Braden grunted, shoving Thorne toward the cruiser. Sarah, the receptionist, was 10 feet away, phone held high and steady. "I am recording this," she announced loudly. "Officer, that is Colonel Thorne. He has an appointment right now. He is not a vagrant." Braden paused for a microsecond at the word colonel, but he pushed it aside. The guy was dressed in khakis and a polo. He didn't look like a colonel to Braden. In Braden's mind, a suspect was a suspect. He shoved Thorne into the back of the cruiser, forcing his large frame into the cramped plastic seat. "You can tell it to the judge," Braden said, slamming the door. Inside the car, the air was stale. Thorne shifted his shoulders, trying to alleviate the pressure on his wrists. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, a technique he used to use before a mission briefing. In for 4 hold, for 4 out for 4. He needed to remain completely clinically detached. He knew that Braden was hoping for an outburst. He wanted Thorne to kick the door, to scream, to give him a reason to add resisting arrest or assault on an officer to the charge sheet. Thorne wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Braden got into the driver's seat. He was breathing heavy, his chest heaving. He picked up the radio. "Dispatch 1 in custody. Transporting to station. Male uncooperative." "Copy that," the radio crackled back. Braden glanced in the rearview mirror. Thorne was staring out the window, looking at the passing suburban houses with the calm interest of a tourist. It unnerved Braden. Usually by now, the guy in the back was begging, crying, or threatening. Thorne was doing none of those things. "You know," Braden said, trying to regain control of the narrative. If you'd just shown me your ID, we wouldn't be here. Thorne didn't answer. He didn't even look at the rearview mirror. I'm talking to you, Braden said, his voice rising again. Thorne remained silent. He knew his Fifth Amendment rights just as well as he knew the Fourth. There was absolutely nothing he could say to this officer that would help the situation. The time for talking was over. Now was the time for documentation. The drive to the station took 15 minutes. Braden drove aggressively, braking hard at lights, trying to jostle his prisoner. Thorne braced himself with his legs and core remaining upright and dignified. When they pulled into the sally port of the police station, Braden marched Thorne inside. The station was busy. Officers were at their desks, phones were ringing. When Braden walked in, pushing a 6-foot 4-inch black man in handcuffs, a few heads turned. But it wasn't the usual look of indifference. The older officers, the ones with 10 or 20 years on the job, paused. They saw something in Thorne's walk. Even in cuffs, even being shoved, he walked with a cadence, a rhythmic, disciplined gait that screams, military. Braden steered Thorne to the booking desk. Got a loitering and failure to identify, Braden announced triumphantly to the desk sergeant. Resisting too. The desk sergeant was a man named Miller. Sergeant Miller was 58 years old, a Marine Corps veteran who had served in the Gulf War. He had seen a lot of rookies come and go. He looked at Braden, then he looked at Thorne. Miller didn't see a criminal. He saw the set of the jaw, the eyes that were taking in the entire room, assessing exits and threats. Take the cuffs off so we can process him, Miller said, his voice gruff. Braden unlocked the cuffs. Thorne rubbed his wrists where red welts were already forming. He didn't complain. Name, Miller asked. Marcus Thorne. Empty your pockets, Mr. Thorne. Everything on the counter. Thorne reached into his pockets. He pulled out a set of keys for the Ford F-150. He pulled out a sleek, simple smartphone. Then he pulled out a leather wallet. Miller picked up the wallet. He opened it to check for ID. The first thing he saw was the driver's license. Marcus Elias Thorne. Address in the most expensive gated community in the county. Miller raised an eyebrow. Then he flipped the flap of the wallet. His heart stopped for a second. Behind the clear plastic window was a Department of Defense Common Access card. It was the blue-colored card reserved for retirees. It listed the rank clearly colonel, and tucked behind it, folded into a small square, was a copy of a DD-214 form. Thorne had it on him because he had a VA appointment later that afternoon regarding his benefits. Miller unfolded it almost reverently. Honorable Discharge, Rank Colonel 06, Awards, Silver Star, Bronze Star, with V-Device 2 Purple Heart. Miller looked up from the paper. He looked at Thorne. Then he looked at Braden, who was leaning against the counter looking smug. Braden, Miller said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Come here. What's up, Sarge? Good collar, right? Miller held up the ID card. Do you have any idea who you just arrested? Some guy loitering at the dentist, Braden said, confused. This guy, Miller hissed, pointing a finger at the card, is a retired Army colonel. He's a Silver Star recipient. He commanded the Special Forces group that operated in the sector my nephew is currently deployed in. Braden's smug expression vanished. He didn't say that. He wouldn't show me ID. Did you ask him why he was there? Miller asked. He said he had an appointment, but you decided you knew better, Miller finished. He looked back at Thorne, who was standing at attention, waiting. Colonel Thorne, Miller said, standing up straighter himself. I am Sergeant Miller, United States Marine Corps inactive. Thorne nodded slowly. Semper Fi, Sergeant. Hoorah, sir, Miller replied automatically. The dynamic in the room flipped instantly. This wasn't a suspect and a cop anymore. This was a sergeant and a colonel. Sir, Miller continued, I need to notify the watch commander immediately. Please take a seat, not on the bench here in the chair. Braden looked like he wanted to vomit. "Sarge, Silence," Miller snapped. "Do not speak to me. Do not speak to him. Go stand in the corner and pray you still have a job tomorrow." Miller picked up the phone. "Captain Reynolds, you need to come down to booking, now." "Yes, sir. It's a code red situation involving personnel. Officer Braden just brought in a full bird colonel on a loitering charge." Captain Reynolds appeared 2 minutes later. He was a tall, weary man who was 2 years away from retirement. He took one look at the paperwork, one look at the video. Braden's body camera would eventually reveal, and he knew the department was in deep trouble. Reynolds walked straight to Thorne. "Colonel Thorne, I am Captain Reynolds. I apologize for this misunderstanding. Please come to my office." "I am not going anywhere until my status is clarified," Thorne said. "Am I under arrest, or am I free to go?" "You are free to go, sir. Immediately. We are dropping all charges. It was a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting your keys, Captain," Thorne said, his voice filling the booking room. "This was a violation of my civil rights, a false arrest and a kidnapping. Your officer detained me without reasonable suspicion. He used force on a compliant citizen. He ignored exculpatory evidence provided by witnesses." Thorne looked at Braden, who was staring at his boots. "Captain, I want the name and badge number of that officer written down. I want a copy of the incident report. I want the body camera footage, the dash cam footage, and the audio of the 911 call preserved immediately. I am formally putting you on notice of pending litigation." Reynolds nodded. He knew the law. He knew Thorne was right. "We will provide all of that, sir. I can have the digital logs ready for you within the hour." "Good," Thorne said. "I have a root canal to get to. I'm already late." Reynolds personally escorted Thorne back to the dentist's office. He offered to drive him, but Thorne refused to get back in a police car. He called an Uber. When he walked back into the dentist's office, the entire waiting room went silent, then burst into applause. Sarah, the receptionist, was still holding her phone. "Did you get it all?" Thorne asked her. "Every second, Colonel," she said. "Send it to me," Thorne said, "and then post it." By that evening, the video was everywhere. The title was simple: "Hero Veteran Arrested for Waiting at Dentist." It showed everything. The calm demeanor of Thorne, the unhinged screaming of Braden, the intervention of the doctor, the arrest. The internet did what the internet does best. It investigated. Within hours, Braden's identity was public. But more importantly, people started digging into his past. This wasn't the first time Braden had done this. There were complaints, buried complaints about him stopping black men in luxury cars, asking them how they could afford such vehicles. He had a pattern. The San Diego Police Department, wait, no, this was Virginia. The Fairfax County Police Department tried to get ahead of it. They put out a statement saying it was under investigation. But the video was too damning. You couldn't spin it. You saw a man who had served his country for 22 years being treated like a criminal for standing in a parking lot. Thorne didn't go on TV immediately. He let the video speak for itself. He hired a top-tier civil rights attorney, a woman who ate police departments for breakfast. They filed a federal lawsuit alleging Fourth Amendment violations, false imprisonment, and racial profiling. The internal affairs investigation was swift because it had to be. The pressure from the public and, frankly, from the military community was immense. Veterans groups were protesting outside the precinct. The hashtag Stand With Thorne was trending worldwide. The investigation revealed that the 911 call was indeed just a suspicious person report with no crime mentioned. Braden had fabricated the loitering charge to cover his tracks. His body cam audio caught him muttering racial slurs under his breath after he put Thorne in the car. That was the nail in the coffin. 6 weeks later, the chief of police held a press conference. Officer Kyle Braden was terminated for cause. No pension, no benefits. And because he was fired for civil rights violations, his certification was revoked. He would never be a police officer in the state of Virginia, or likely anywhere else ever again. But Thorne wasn't done. He refused to settle quietly. He demanded a public apology from the city and a change in policy regarding suspicious person calls. The city, terrified of a jury trial where Thorne would testify in his dress blues with his medals on his chest caved, they settled for $1.2 million. Thorne took the check. He didn't buy a new car. He didn't go on vacation. He started a legal defense fund for veterans who had been mistreated by police. He called it the Service and Justice Initiative. 6 months after the incident, Marcus Thorne went back to Dr. Evans for a checkup. The sun was shining again. The birds were chirping. He parked his truck in the same spot. He got out, locked the door, and stood there for a moment. He looked at the spot where he had been handcuffed. He thought about the fear he had seen in the eyes of young soldiers in combat and the arrogance he had seen in the eyes of Officer Braden. He thought about the country he had fought for, a country where a man could be a hero overseas and a suspect at home. Sarah waved at him from the window. He smiled and waved back. He walked into the office, a free man but a changed man. He knew that the system was broken, but he also knew that it could be fixed if good people stood their ground, if witnesses recorded the truth, and if those with the power to speak up didn't stay silent. What Braden failed to understand, and what he learned the hard way, is that authority isn't about the badge on your chest. It's about the character in your heart. You can't demand respect. You have to command it. And on that Tuesday morning, only one man in that parking lot had true command. We need to ask ourselves some hard questions. How many Marcus Thornes are there who don't have the rank of colonel? How many people get arrested and ruin their lives because they don't have the resources to fight back? If this story made you angry, good. Use that anger. Demand accountability in your own towns. What do you think was the $1.2 million settlement enough? Should Officer Braden have faced criminal charges for kidnapping? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in justice for our veterans and for all citizens, please subscribe and share this video. It's the only way we get the truth out there. Stay safe, know your rights, and never stop recording.